Okay. Cool guys. So yeah, I'm Eric from Fitted Underground here in Brooklyn, and so we're going to talk a little bit about fit and sizing. Um, let's see. If you have questions during this, feel free just to jump in, unmute yourself, say hello. I will get lonely if I just end up speaking for 20, 30, 40 minutes straight. So yeah, shoot me a text message or just jump in and say hi. And then I ask you to be a little bit patient with me. I haven't given a presentation on this before, so this is the first time through. So we will see how it goes. We'll just take it as it comes. But yeah, so what I want to discuss today is fit and sizing, and ultimately leave you with kind of like a guideline or a framework for identifying your right fit, what it exactly means, how to find it. And so we're going to talk about it today within the context of kind of two general ideas. So that's, again, fit and sizing. Fit is how a garment, kind of drapes and lays and structures on your body. Kind of self-explanatory what fit is. Sizing is the actual mechanics of achieving that fit. So sizing determines fit. So that will be the kind of the two broad subjects of the talk. With regards to sizing, what like the current modern sizing, the way that it is people generally know like two measurements, right? It's like I know my waist and I know my length. So I'm like a 34, 32, and there's lots of variations on that. But it's, that's it. Maybe like your rise, whether you're high rise, low rise, maybe a leg cut, but generally it's those two components. It's waist and your length. And so that's, it's kind of worked well enough, but it isn't great. Most people know that when they go to the store and they try like a 34, 32 or whatever your size is, going from one brand to another, the sizing is all over the place, even though, those quote unquote measurements are the same. And then often even within a brand, you'll try a 34, 32, basically off the same shelf. And it's just not identical. So it's really tricky. It's really difficult to actually use those numbers to find your sizing. And there's a really good reason for that. And the reason for that is that those numbers aren't tethered to anything. There's no industry standard that says, like a size 34 waist is in fact 34. There's been vanity sizing that has kind of crept into waist sizing. And then over time, the natural or the actual waistline has come down on people. So back in the day, the waist size was actually relatively high up on your waist. And then over time, that sizing has come down, or the location of the actual waist has come down on a person's body. So those numbers have changed quite dramatically over time. So, that's all to say that modern sizing is an imperfect science. It's good enough. So if your girlfriend or whomever is going to the store for you, you can tell them this is my sizing. But does that mean that you're going to really get things dialed in? Not necessarily. And when you're buying a pair of raw denim that costs $200, $300, $400, getting that sizing right is tremendously important. This is a garment that's going to be with you longer than most Hollywood marriages. It's going to cost a lot of money. So to get the fit correct from day one is really important, especially as more and more people are purchasing denim online. So what's the solution, right? What's the solution to modern sizing? In a sentence, it's to know your measurements. And I was speaking with actually big dude, Michael, a little while back about this, and he really just impressed upon me, know your measurements, know your measurements, know your measurements. And that's kind of become a mantra of mine. So sizing varies, measurements don't. And let's just draw a distinction. So we're not talking about the measurements that you see on a company's website. We're really talking about the measurements of the garment when it arrives, and that you can become empowered to actually take those measurements yourself to identify whether that's going to be your correct fit or not. So identifying the measurements that are critical for you to know, and then identifying how to actually take those measurements, capture those measurements, and then store those measurements, that really empowers you as a consumer to know exactly, one, what you like, and two, what's actually going to fit you over time just in terms of you getting the right product that you want. So again, like a big component of this is empowering you, the consumer, to identify what's important to you. So when we talk about sizing, there are 7 key components that are critical when it comes to the key measurements that you want to know. So the 7 measurements, and this is general, right? Like different people are going to have different perspectives on this. But if we really boil it down, there are 7 key measurements that you want to know. And this is nice because it actually aligns with a lot of the measurements that are out there with different companies in terms of what's on their web pages. So you can cross-check these measurements. But the 7 measurements are your waist, your front rise, your rear rise, your thigh, your knee, leg opening, and then the actual inseam length. So those are the 7 core measurements. And what I wanted to do was actually just go ahead and actually run through those different measurements and how to capture them. So let me pause there. Let me see if there's any questions. I'm curious, just like, you know, show of hands, like how many people actually know their own measurements, know those, you know, those 7 measurements or their approximate measurements. So I don't know if you guys can see each other, but I see like about 30% of the hands going up, 25% of the hands going up. And you know, that's really critical. That's really important when it comes to getting the right fit. You know, my buddy Ramel always talks about his various F's when it comes to style: fashion, fit, fabric, finish, and there's one other. But you know, making sure that you're dialed in when it comes to fit, that's gonna save you a ton of money and just save you a big headache. You know, the worst thing to do is you get a pair of jeans and you're at the store, you're rifling through all the different options, and there's a jean that fits really darn close, but there's just one measurement that's kind of off. So you get that jean, take it home, you convince yourself in the store that it's good enough, but then after 6 months, you know, you've only worn it once or twice. So
Hey Eric, why are you denim shaming me since I don't know my measurements?
you're so shameable, Jason. Again, it's, you know, it's to empower people. It's obviously not about shaming people, but it's to empower you so that you know what you like, and then it's going to be easier for you to find what you like. Again, one of the wonderful things about this is that so many of the companies out there, they provide the measurements to you. Now, we should just say briefly, just because a measurement is up on a company's website, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the actual measurement that you receive in the mail. So one of the critical things about this is that you have to do your own quality assurance. You have to take it upon yourself to make sure that jean is correct when it comes to you. Within the production process, every company is going to have quality assurance, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a good quality assurance. And there's tolerances. So when jeans go through the production process, maybe the leg spec, the knee spec is supposed to come out at 8 inches, and there's a 1/4 inch tolerance there. But is everybody going to go through and measure each of those measurements? No, they're not. So you as the consumer really need to take that upon yourself to do that, because if you're going to return a pair of raw denim jeans that cost you $200 or $300 or $400, you got to do it before, you know, you really start breaking them in. So
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good point. I mean, I hate to fault myself, but I'm just super lazy, man. I just got to go over to your shop and have you measure for me or something.
yeah, so there's like yes, definitely come over. There's a ton of different ways to do this as well, you know. So for people doing this remotely, my suggestion is to utilize your favorite pair of jeans, right? Like, you've worn them, you know what they feel like, you know the fit of them, you're happy with them. They've done a lot of the work for you. So why not take that fit and then basically just take the core measurements from it, and then save that somewhere. You know, there's a wonderful page on the Fitted NYC website, Fitted Underground website, and you can save your measurements right there. So little plug for myself. But you know, that's one way to actually capture your measurements. It's taking measurements from a favorite pair of jeans. To take that up a level, you know, don't use a favorite pair, use your favorite pairs. So multiple pairs, cross-check those core measurements against a few other pairs. Make sure that you're doing it right. Really allow yourself to drill in to the measurement. Another way to capture the measurements, if you go to a tailor, generally they're going to use a measuring tape and start taking physical measurements from your body. That way works. I think that it introduces a little bit more uncertainty. If you go ahead and take like core measurements from your body, you do it 3 times, you'll probably come up with 3 different measurements unless you really know what you're doing. So I think as a process for doing this at home, that's a little bit challenging. I'm just looking at the comments right now, and somebody's asking if John Cena is really here. So if it is John Cena, really, say hey. We'd love to say hi to you.
That's
And
amazing.
if it's not John Cena, you can say hey anyway.
Well,
So
not to cut you off, I had a question in terms of like going to a tailor or someone like yourself.
yeah,
It's kind of really up to that person measuring you, right? Like as a consumer, do we give you that feedback of like, oh, I like it more slim fitting or loose or more like a 501 fit? How does that usually, how do you take that into account?
exactly. Total partnership when it comes to actually identifying your measurement, your fit, what you like. I'll speak just for myself. When people come here to Fit at Underground and get fitted, I can use up to 3 separate processes for actually capturing their measurements. So here at the workshop, I have my magic fit samples. So people put on the fit samples, then we can identify if the rise is right. There's some zippers on the side, so we can actually very quickly tailor the leg. So whether you want a straight cut, tailored leg, or a slim cut, we can do that really, really quickly. But in addition to that, I'll also encourage people to bring a favorite pair of jeans. So if they have it, say bring it with you. Let's use that as a cross check. And then the final way to do that is we can actually take physical measurements on the body. So you can actually do all 3 of these ways and then kind of come up with a final fit that's right for you. So it's really about how deep you want to go into the process. Yeah, my fit samples are over there. Maybe if we have a little extra time, I'll show you guys that later on in the talk. But just to round out the thought, so the different ways that you can capture your measurements are taking measurements from your favorite pair or pairs, taking physical measurements using a measuring tape. You can come over here to Fit at Underground, and I can fit you using my magic fit samples. And then finally, just to touch on this briefly, there's more and more online digital fit processes that are coming to the fore, where you hold your phone in front of you and then it kind of spits out a fit. Those are improving, but they're not yet perfected. So I would just say, be a little cautious when you're using them. If you're doing that through like some kind of website where they're going to make you a custom garment, just definitely check what their return and adjustment policies are. So again, just going back to it, my personal suggestion for when doing this at home is to utilize your best fitting pair and take it from there. So any other questions at this point, or should we jump into taking measurements and me showing you guys a few tricks of the trade, how to do it? And I love the questions. Jason, thank you. It's always good talking to you. We should do a podcast together.
We should.
All right, cool. So I'm going to show you those measurements. If you want to, you can jump over to my website, fitted.nyc, and there's a measurements page, and it shows you the 7 different measurements and how to go ahead and do it. I'm going to show you real quick. We're going to kind of blow through them, but there are some key components that I want to discuss when you're taking those measurements. It's like, to me, because I do this kind of day in, day out, it's like, obviously this is how you do it. It's no thing. But then I'm always amazed when people go ahead and do it themselves. It can go off the rails sometimes. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. So I'm going to put the video down here. So hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. So the first measurement is your waistband. There's a little bit of a trick to it. And by the way, these are like one of the first pairs of jeans that I ever made. And I actually wore this when I married my wife. So these are my wedding jeans. So Rick, I gave you a shout out that I made you your wedding jeans and you looked fantastic in it. These are my wedding jeans, just for contrast. There's actually on my blog, I put up a post of a Denim wedding. And so I have all my pictures up there of me in these jeans marrying my wife. And then I made jeans for all my best men as well. So again, you can check that out on fitted.nyc. So when measuring the waistband, the critical thing is when the waistband normally falls, the front rise is normally lower and less than the rear rise. So the front rise, the top of the waistband comes down. What you want to do, you just want to pull that up, make this flat. Another important thing when doing this is you don't want to stretch right? You don't want to pull on the jeans. You want it to naturally lay flat. So I'm just going to lay that flat there. What you can do to kind of win extra bonus points is take some weights. It doesn't have to be these kind of professional weights, but it can be, you know, a milk carton or whatever. Take the weights, make sure the waistband is straight, and then just put the weights down, right? So it's not pulling, but so it's going to be flat and stationary, and then just take your measuring tape and measure straight across the top. So here I have a measurement of like 18 1/8. And so this is a finished measurement, right? And we need to note that this is what I want my final measurement to come out at. So at the end, we'll go back and we'll talk about adjustments that we need to make to some of these measurements to actually capture your day one fit, not just your final fit. So that's the first measurement, the waistband right there. The second measurement is going to be your front rise. And the key component with this is that everything is flat, right? Like note that I'm taking these measurements on a hard, flat surface. That's really important. You don't do this up in the air. You don't do it on a carpet. You have to do this on a hard, flat surface. So something like a table or cement floor, that's where it's at. So that's gonna make your measurements much better. Here you can see the front rise, which goes from the center point in the crotch up to the top of the front of the waistband. Nice and flat and even. And we'll go ahead and take the measurement real quick. And we come out to 11 right on the dot. So that's the front rise. Rear rise, flip it over, do the same thing. When you're doing the rear rise, what's helpful is to take the legs and just flip them up like that. And that's gonna allow you to make this measurement and get that measurement a lot flatter and take it much quicker. So the measurement would be from the center point in the crotch up to the top of the waistband here. So it's a little bit too long for me to do on the table, so I won't show you the measuring tape with this one, but that's the third one. The fourth one is going to be, now I should point out here, some people say the fourth one is actually a hip measurement. Hip measurement is a tricky measurement to take for a lot of people. Generally you come 7 inches down from the side seam on both sides and then you measure across. But there's a really strong correlation between your hip measurement and your thigh measurement, at least in the men's market. Generally, if you have large thighs, you're going to have a larger booty. So there's a really strong correlation. So 99% of the time, 95% of the time, you don't have to do both. You can just do the one, and the thigh measurement is generally easier to take. So the thigh measurement, right, we're going to flatten this guy out. Right? And now this is really important. When you take a look, when you're cross-checking these measurements against what's out there on various companies' websites, sometimes the measurement is taken right at the crotch point and then taken directly across the jean. Other times it's taken 1 inch down from this crotch point. But my suggestion is, and I'll show you 2 ways of doing this. My suggested way of doing this is fold your jeans over right at the inseam. Right? So you can see the inseam right there. So that's where you make the fold. And then when you come 1 inch down from the center point at the crotch, so 1 inch there, right? I come down. Now from this point, I measure directly over to the side seam. And again, I just make sure everything is flat. If you take a look at pattern makers who have been in the business a long time, whenever they take measurements, you'll always see them do this. Right? So that's them flattening out the fabric without stretching it. So padding fabric, that's an old pattern maker's trick to identify the appropriate measurements. So this is the first way to measure your thigh. Again, 1 inch down directly over, and we fold it at the inseam. The second way to measure the thigh, and you see a lot of companies doing this, and it's a little bit perplexing to me, but they will just fold it over at the natural break in kind of the center back of the jean. So they're not folding it at the inseam, and then they'll come 1 inch down from this point over here. So again, we'll come 1 inch down from here, and then we measure directly over. So 9 times out of 10 here, we would get the same measurement, and here on this one we do. It's just under 13 inches, so 12 3/4 of an inch. What I don't like about that is now technically you're actually measuring some of the fabric from the center back. But yeah, different companies do it different ways, but you generally result in the same measurement. Whatever way that company shows on their website, that's the way to do it. But like I said, because the measurement is coming out in the same spot, those two measurements should be the same. So let's finish off the measurements. So that was the thigh. The next one is the knee. Generally, that's taken at 13 or 14 inches down the inseam. So we're going to measure down the inseam 13 inches. I'm going to fold over directly at the inseam here. So we make the fold at the inseam. My little padding trick. I come 13 inches down. For fitted underground, I take the knee measurement at 13 inches. Again, some companies will do it at 14 inches. It's not going to be a huge difference. There's going to be a bigger difference for the thigh, whether it's taken at the crotch point or 1 inches down, generally a half inch on a flat lay basis. But here, my knee measurement is 9 inches. And then the final width measurement that we want to take is going to be at the base of the leg. And so this measurement here, I got it 7.5 inches. And so that's the leg. The final measurement to take is the inseam. And here again, you start at the center point in the crotch, and then you just follow the inseam down. What you can do as you come down is hold your finger at a point as the inseam naturally turns, and just hold your finger there and just go ahead and turn the measuring tape. So let's do that again, measuring tape here, and then I turn it and then bring it out to the end over here. So this is just about 31 inches for the length. Since I got married and wore this, I prefer my jeans at like 32 or even 33 inches. When you do inseam and you do lengths, my suggestion is always go a little bit longer than shorter. So that's it when it comes to sizing. Again, I just want to reiterate, know your measurements. That's how to capture your measurements. And store those in a really safe place. Put them in your phone, email them to yourself. There's a place on my website where you can store it, and then it's always there. But if you know those 7 measurements, then whenever you get a new product in, and it's going to say one thing on the website, but just take those measurements again, and you can identify whether they're actually coming out on spec or not. So let me pause there. Any questions about that measurement process?
None. That was pretty good.
Oh, thanks, Byron.
I got a question.
Yeah, shoot.
So when you're measuring, right, is there a difference between measuring directly at the inch above the hem or the hem opening?
Great question, Ramel. There's, by the way, there's something funky going on with my screen, so I can like.
It's you.
It's me. It's me. I can basically see like no one, but whatever. We're just gonna go with it. Ramel, that was you, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So Ramel's question, where do you measure at the leg opening? So great question. What I normally do, what I suggest people doing is actually measuring right above the hem. So actually kind of like landing on that measurement. So when I do it, I start here and then I come down, and you're going to hit a point where the hem is actually folded over. And so it's going to stop you. This is going to give you a true measurement of the actual denim fabric. Once you start going down here and measuring the bottom of it, now you're actually having to take into account all this bulk and excess that's folded up from the hem itself. So my personal suggestion is, start and come down, kind of land on that measurement. That being said, cross-check it. Like right now, this is coming out at 7 5/8. And when I do it from down here on the bottom, I'm at 7 5/8. So, potato, both work out the same. Did that answer your question?
Kinda, yes. Do you think it matters between thickness of denim?
So the thicker the denim gets, the more important the original technique that I showed you becomes. So measuring and then kind of following that down. As the denim becomes thicker, that hem roll becomes thicker and thicker as well. And so it becomes more challenging to capture a true measurement.
Copy.
Thanks for dialing in, Ramel.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I miss seeing you.
Well, yeah, I miss seeing all you guys, but I see you.
If I could get my Zoom to work, I could see you now, but.
Well, my thing's on a picture anyway.
Okay, it just came through, so.
And it started recording too.
Okay.
It wasn't recording for a moment. You
Cool.
missed my great question.
So that is sizing. So I wanted to get sizing out of the way so we're clear about what the key measurements are, and now we can kind of move on to fit. So yeah, any other questions about taking measurements, or we're cool there? Or?
I mean, I kind of feel like all bets are off when you compare raw state versus wash state. How do you account for that? I mean, we all love denim and its raw state, but it kind of throws you for a loop, I guess, you know?
Yeah, totally. And look, even what I've just measured right now, that's a finished product. That's a final fit, right? So we're not talking about fit on day one. Fit on day one is actually going to be different measurements from what we just did. I was going to kind of talk about this at the end, but this is a good segue into it. So let's do it now. When you take those measurements, right, that's your final fit. That's where you want things to end up. But you have to consider there's going to be stretchage, right? There's stretching. So we all love raw denim. We're probably banging the hell out of them. So we're wearing it for whatever, 2, 3, 6 months, a year without washing them. So where you get it on day one is not going to be, and the measurements that you're taking as a final fit is not going to be the measurements on day one and vice versa. So how do you adjust, right? How do you go from, okay, those are my final fit measurements based off my favorite pair to what I want to buy off the rack or order online? So the core adjustments when we're talking about 100% cotton, sanifarized denim, number one, it's going to be to the waistband. You're going to get about an inch of stretch. So on a flat lay basis, you want to subtract a ½ inch, right? If that makes sense. So your total stretch is an inch on a half lay basis. Everything is divided by 2. So you subtract about a ½ inch off of it. For your rear rise, that can, and look, 1 inch is an approximation, right? It can really be anywhere from like a ½ inch to a full inch, depending what happened in terms of sewing. For the rear rise, you're going to want to subtract about 3/4 of an inch. For your thigh, and that's total and both on a flat lay or body basis. For the thigh, you want to take off about a ½ inch total as well. It's half of what the waistband is, right? Your thigh is about half the width. So on a flat lay basis, instead of subtracting a ½ inch, you're subtracting 1/4 of an inch. When it comes to the knee and the leg opening, that's really not going to be impacted that much. When it comes to the front rise, that's really not going to be impacted that much. So you don't have to make alterations for those 3. The final one, the inseam, you do need to make an alteration. Inseams can be funny, man. I mean, like if you want to do an experiment, measure your inseam on day one, measure it after a little while, measure it after it goes in the wash, and obviously never put things in the dryer. But usually your inseam is going to shrink up maybe like a ½ inch, sometimes a full inch. Again, we're talking about sanifarized basis. But every now and then you will get a pair of jeans and you throw it in the wash and it comes out and the inseam is longer than when it went in. So, I don't know if that's because of the moisture and now you're putting water back into the cotton fibers and it's absorbing that. And so it's expanding. I don't know what the science behind it is. But a good rule of thumb, is to, add an inch, to the length. And look, if a hem length or an inseam length is too long, so be it, like instead of your single cuff, do a double cuff, take a page out of Ramel's book and do a monster cuff. And you can always get it hemmed and hemming isn't very expensive. So when in doubt, and this is actually true for all measurements, when in doubt, always go a little bit larger than smaller. The 2 other big considerations that we would need to talk about, which we probably don't have enough time to do, would be if you're getting denim with stretch in it, and then if you're getting unsanifarized denim like you were talking about, Jason. Stretch has more elasticity, and so it's not going to stretch out as much. Think of it like being like you basically are wearing a rubber band, right? And so after you take that jean off, the elastane or polyester, whatever the stretchy fibers in there are going to reset, and they're going to basically pull that denim back in. So for the waistband, for the rear rise, for the thigh, basically take the adjustments that I gave you and divide all those in half. For an unsanifarized product, now things get really interesting, right? Because not all unsanifarized products are the same. There are some rules of thumb that we can work with. And then the other consideration with unsanifarized products is how you actually launder it, right? Are you going to be just dunking it into a cold bath and letting it hang dry? Are you going to be wearing it while you launder it? jump in the tub with it and then let it dry on you. So let me just speak to it really quickly so then we can dive back into fit. Is if you're going to get an unsanitized product and you want like a more fitted look, generally there's usually going to be more shrinkage through the vertical warp than through the horizontal weft. And that's important, really important in two places. One is your inseam. So you definitely want to get a longer inseam. Assume that there's not going to be 1 inch of shrinkage, that there's going to be 2 through the inseam. Again, sometimes more. This is just a rule of thumb. And then the second place that's really important, and you wouldn't think about this because, again, we're talking about a vertical warp, is where? Let me throw it out to you guys. Where's another place where you have to consider that there's going to be a lot of shrinkage as a result of the vertical warp? Not just your inseam, but what's the line from Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Who?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Where they're like, anyone?
Your eyes?
Anyone? Bueller.
Bueller.
Come on, Bueller. It's the waistband, right? So when you think about how a waistband is constructed, generally waistbands are cut along the warp, right? Not along the weft. So even though they're lying horizontal on the body, it's actually cut along a vertical strip of denim. So there's going to be a significant amount of shrinkage through the inseam and through the waistband. So again, the inseam, you want to add at least 2 inches. For the waistband, you can either start off where you want to end up, or you can add 1 inch to that. A good rule of thumb is whatever you're getting for a sanitized product, you can size up one, which is basically adding 1 inch, which basically means that the shrinkage as a result of the unsanitized denim, which is substantial, is going to offset the stretchage that you're going to have just from wearing that denim day in and day out. Does that make sense? Am I yelling too much? Do I sound crazy over here?
No, that makes sense. I'm just going to come to you.
Okay. Yeah. Or just come to me, right? I mean, after a little while, it does get a little bit involved. So, okay. So that's sizing. So now I just want to talk about fit a little bit, right? And like, what does it mean to have a good fitting pair of jeans? Like, what is a good fitting pair of jeans and what isn't? On one level, right? Like you put on a pair of jeans and you wear it after a while and you're like, I like this, I connect with this. This is my favorite pair. It's at the top of the rotation. This is what I want to be wearing, right? So on one level, it's just intuitive and On another level, like let's go ahead and just kind of like drill into that a little bit so we can identify and zero in on what are the components of the different pieces of fit that you connect with and that you don't. So again, right now I'm talking about a fitted garment. And so, you can have your personal style, which maybe is really loose and baggy and relaxed. And that's cool, more power to you. But if you want something that's going to fit your body really nicely and just kind of feel a little bit like a second skin, not something that's suffocating your body, but something that's fitted to your body and is appropriate to you, then, sorry, I'm just looking at John Cena comments. Then there are some parameters that we need to operate within. So to have this discussion, let's go ahead and just break a pair of jeans into its 2 primary component parts, right? The number one, or the 2 components parts of a pair of jeans are 1, the top block, and 2, the leg shape, right? So the top block of a pair of a jean is basically from the waistband down to the thigh. It's how that jean is going to sit and hopefully stay on your body. The leg shape is from that upper thigh all the way down to the leg opening and is inclusive of the inseam length and the taper. So just drilling into the top block a little bit, right? Like the principle when it comes to the top block is for a final fit, not talking about the fit on day one, but a final fit is you want a gentle hug, right? So you don't want it kind of like loosely falling off your body. You don't want it constricted so that you're uncomfortable when standing or sitting. And that's a really important piece to all this, is you want to be comfortable when you're both standing and sitting. But you want that gentle hug. And then when you get that, you can wear that throughout the course of the day. And, my wife asked me the day, she's like, are you comfortable wearing jeans all day? It's like, well, yeah, because they fit me perfectly. So I kind of enjoy it. So I wear jeans like all throughout the course of the day, and I'm happy in it because it fits me right. I've been sitting, now for almost 2 hours in my favorite pair of jeans, and it's just like, it's right, it fits. So let's dive into the top lock a little bit more. Just circling back to the measurements, right? The 4 measurements that make up the top lock are your waist measurement, your front rise, your rear rise, and your thigh, right? Those are the 4 measurements that comprise the top lock. And so let's kind of go from top down to bottom and just talk about some parameters around that. When we talk about the waist, basically with a waistband, we don't want it so tight that when you're walking around, you're starting to get hot spots, and we don't want it so loose that, when you put on a belt, there are waves forming, right? Where the denim is actually starting to fold over on itself. Instead, what we want when it comes to a waistband is for it to pass what I call the tug test. So let me go ahead and show you. So I'm wearing my favorite pair right now. Let's take this down. And so the tug test is for the jeans right here around my waist. As I pull down on them, right, it resists, right? So while they're actually on my body, it's comfortable, right? There isn't like excessive. I'm going to show you guys my butt. I should have warned you in advance, but here comes my butt. There isn't like a gapping in the back, right? Instead, it's kind of like, it's like the cross section. I think of it like the cross section of 2 funnels. It's like, something is concave like this, and then you put something else on top of it, and it just sits there. So that's generally how you want the waistband to fit. And again, it has to pass that tug test. Not too tight, not too loose. Baby bear. The second component is your rise. And the rise is really important. It's the most underrated component of a jean. So we have our front rise and our rear rise. And I want to show you a little trick for identifying your appropriate rise. So, and that is, well, let me just talk about the rear rise briefly. Like what will happen with a lot of guys is they'll feel like their rear rise, let's see down here, they'll feel like their rear rise is saggy, like the jeans aren't filling out their butt, and you have all this kind of like diaper butt down through the crotch. And a lot of guys will think, oh, the hip isn't tight enough or the thigh isn't tight enough. Like, no, the big thing is your rear rise is too long. So if your rear rise is too long, you're going to have a little bit of that diaper butt back there. If it's too short, then whenever you sit down, you're going to get, your inner plumber is going to come out. So to get the correct rise, here's a trick for doing it. So what you want to do is you want to pull up your jeans so that the backside is filled out, so you don't have excess fabric down below in your booty. And then a really good marker for identifying your appropriate rise is to identify where your underwear is and then come up a ½ inch. And you can do that both in the front and the back. These jeans fit me perfectly. So the jeans come up and cover my underwear by ½ inch in the front and then also a ½ inch in the back. And so what that allows is that when I sit down as well, when you sit down, a few things happen, but one of the things that happens is your booty kind of becomes more concave, and it pulls the denim down a little bit. And if you have that additional ½ inch to anywhere from like a ½ inch to a full inch on the rear rise, you're going to be covered. So again, baby bear, it's not too long, it's not too short, you're not getting diaper butt, and you're not developing a plumber's crack in the back. Final components of your top block are going to be your hip and thigh. And basically it's, again, like I said earlier, there's a high correlation between the two. So we can kind of treat them as one thing. The core thing to remember about your thigh is that when you sit down, so it should feel comfortable, again, going back to that principle of a gentle hug for the top lock, you should have that gentle hug when you're wearing it. But then when you sit down, keep in mind that your jeans are going to ride up a little bit, right? So as your jeans ride up, they're, like cylinders that get smaller. So now the cylinder is getting smaller as it comes up. And then when your actual leg presses into a chair, it's no longer circular, it becomes an oval, and it actually expands. The surface area of your leg is actually expanding. So you're taking a larger object and you're stuffing it into a smaller space. So when you try on a pair of jeans or when you're identifying your perfect fit, be sure that you sit down as well and that you're comfortable while seated as well as standing. So there's a few different tests in there, right? There's the tug test to make sure that you have your waistband right. There is the underwear test to make sure that you have the rise right. There's the sit test to make sure that you have your thigh right. And then the final thing is the girlfriend test. And that is that for some reason, whenever a couple comes over and we go through a fitting, when we're done with it, it's always the same. The female, the lady always says, all right, now turn around. And ladies, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but every time I've seen it, they always want to see the guy's butt and make sure that it looks good. So you want to pass that test as well, where you basically have a fitted garment and you look good coming and going. So that's a little bit of vanity, and it's not for everybody. But if you have a significant other auditing your look, you're going to want to get it. You're going to want to get that fit right. So that's the top block. We can kind of move on to the leg taper right now. Let me just pause there. Any questions about the top block? The top block is pretty prescriptive, and it's more challenging as well. The leg taper is kind of easy breezy compared to this.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's me, Byron.
Byron, man.
So you're basically building your tolerances into your pattern as well?
So when you say I'm building my tolerances into the pattern, you mean, sorry, go ahead.
You're measuring like your tolerances is like, maybe like your shrinkage, your all that stuff is built into the pattern?
So when I do a fitting, the stretching is primarily fit in. And like, this is personal, right? Like it depends on how you're going to be laundering your jeans. If you're going to be laundering your jeans every time you wash them, then your first fit is your final fit, right? For most raw denim heads, if you're getting a pair of jeans and then you're wearing it for 6 months straight, then you need to bake in those alterations into the jeans, where it's going to start off a little bit tighter, and your final fit is going to be the fit after 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so, once your jeans have fully relaxed. So it really depends on the customer.
Okay. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just talking here.
My wife calls them leg prisons.
Your jeans, or when you sit down, or your thighs, or?
Well, yeah, just starting off raw. I mean, she sees the pain I go through.
Yeah.
So, leg prisons.
Yeah, man. Love is suffering, right?
Leg
prisons. Okay. Any other questions about the top block, or we're cool with that?
I have a question.
Shoot.
Hi. So if the test, the girlfriend or the wife test, is not passed the first time, what adjustment do you have to make sure that works?
Oh my God. So there's something funny going on with my screen. So I was like, who is this person? I know this person. I think this is my wife. So I didn't even listen to your question. I was just laughing because I'm like, oh, that's my baby. That's my baby. I love my wife. Dorothy, you got to say it again. I'm being honest. I didn't even listen. I was just happy to hear your voice.
Oh,
Tell me again. Okay.
Well, if the wife-girlfriend test is not passed the first time, right? They turn around. It doesn't look good. What adjustment do you have to make that work?
So I interpret that as, I don't like how your jeans fit, Eric. No.
She's calling you out. She says you have a flat butt.
Come on, I'm doing a thing here, There's other.
You got a flat butt, dude.
Yeah.
No, he has a coconut butt.
I play soccer. I played soccer.
That's a coconut butt.
Coconut butt.
So yeah, that's a good question. If it doesn't, if you don't pass the girlfriend test on the first pass, there's two things you can do. The number one thing is usually going to be the rear rise length is too long, right? And most people actually don't recognize that. Most people think that, okay, you have to tighten things up. Let me call myself out. When I started and I knew nothing about denim, and I did like my first fits, my first 6 months doing this, I was like, oh, looks like there's too much fabric through the seat of your pants. Let's tighten up the thigh. And that does actually, when you tighten the thigh, you actually are shortening the rear rise, but it's like a secondary effect. The primary effect is that it becomes tighter around your thigh. So I had 1 or 2 clients who were like, I appreciate that you did the alteration, but this does not feel better. So I have learned from making mistakes back in the day. So there's 2 things you can do, like I was saying. The first thing is to shorten the rise. That's not a fun adjustment to make. When you have to shorten a rise and you do it correctly, you have to remove the waistband, and then you're starting to take fabric out from the yoke. And so there's just a lot of, to do that, again, you have to remove a waistband, you have to remove all the belt loops that are bar tacked on, which is a bit of a pain.
Ow!
Oh, sorry. I hope everybody.
Dog unmuted me.
So that's the first option. The second thing that you can do is you can also tighten things up between the hip and the thigh. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else, or we're cool with that? So let's actually keep going, just because I know it's 8:55 and people want to jump to another call. So the final component of fit is the leg taper, and like I said, leg taper is pretty easy breezy. You know, you can have fun with it. That's really your personal style, what you connect with, what feels right to you, what you're comfortable wearing. It's also regional as well. You know, generally when you're in a city, usually it's going to be a little bit more tapered. Not always, but generally. And then as you get outside cities, usually it's a little bit more of a relaxed fit. But there's three general leg tapers. You know, there's a straight, there's a tapered, and there's a slim or a skinny. The straight, like, you know, it's a little bit funny because even a modern straight isn't technically straight. There's still going to be some taper, usually, you know, 99% of the time, where you're probably losing about an inch worth of width between your knee at 13 inches and the end of the taper, somewhere between, you know, 27 to 34 inches. So that's a modern straight. There's still a little bit of a taper. And then with regards to a taper, that's kind of baby bear right down the middle. Most of my clients, I'd say like 50%, so a plurality at least, 51%, most of my clients go with a taper. And then a skinny or a slim is a little bit more of like a hipster vibe. And again, it's just what works for you. The final component of the leg shape, so there's the taper, but then there's also the length. And my suggestion to people whenever they are trying to figure out what their length is always err on the side of being too long than too short. You know, for me, for Fitted Underground, for people who purchase from me, I think it's like, you know, 60 days of free alterations. So you buy it, you know, beat the heck out of it. And maybe at the end of that period, you put it through the wash and make sure that it fits right. And then you can always come back. And it's obviously so much easier to take a hem up as opposed to finding tricky, resourceful ways to let it down. You can do it, but it's not always pretty, depending on the creases and fades that have formed. So that is fit. Again, like, it's your personal style, but there are some parameters that you want to work within. I'm going to put up a post of all this on my blog. So if you're thinking about buying a new pair of denim and you just kind of want to cross-reference, you know, how to do those measurements or you know, what it means to identify your right fit, jump on there and take a look. That'll be up tomorrow. And then just remember that there's unique instances for everybody. You know, like some guys, for most guys, the waist is usually going to be smaller than the hips. For some guys, your waist is the same size as your hips, or some cases bigger than. And so that becomes, you know, challenging just in terms of how to get the jeans so it's not kind of sliding off of your body. I'm always here. You know, you can always shoot me a DM on Instagram or give me a call or come into the shop if you're here in Brooklyn, or do a Zoom call. And so I'm always happy to help answer those questions. And then just a final plug, you know, now that we're in COVID-19 kind of time and people are a little bit anxious about going out to stores, definitely if you're doing online shopping, and please support small brands, you know, we need your support and appreciate it. But if you're shopping online, take a look at those measurements. Make sure you know your own measurements. And when you get that pair of jeans, cross-check it. And then when you're ready, you know, to step up and get a custom garment, you know, give me a holler, say hey. So anyway, that's kind of fit and sizing from a high level. Any final questions or comments, or I don't know. I don't even know how many people stayed on. And, oh wow, look at all these crazy people. Oh, hey.
Eric, I have a question regarding styles, I guess.
Oh, hello, Christopher. How are you?
Hey. So you've got my measurements. I've got my favorite pair of jeans from you, obviously, and so you know it's a beautiful taper. But like next year, obviously, you know, boot cut's coming back, and so you know, do you just add a couple inches to the bottom, or is it a new measurement, or or is it a pattern? Are patterns even relevant in custom?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when people want to switch between styles, like my whole conception for Fitted Underground when I started, I used to be in corporate America. I quit my job 6 years ago, and I had this vision for a business where basically you'd have one set of measurements and then you could do anything with it. So the whole idea was that there's a core set of measurements, and then you can overlay different styles on top of that. So if you want to go from like a tapered leg up to a straight leg, that's super easy. If you want to go from a tapered leg to a boot cut, you can do that. It's a little bit trickier just because, you know, a boot cut to one person is sometimes, you know, an umbrella cut for somebody else. And you have, you know, different perspectives on that. But the core of it, the core of the fit remains the same. And that's been one of the great things about my business is that once you have somebody's fit really dialed in, I have a lot of customers where it's like I'm their go-to. It's like once they've put in the time to really achieve that right fit, then it's game on and they kind of come back to that same fit, tweaking it a little bit in terms of length or taper or whatever, time and time again. So yeah, good question. Does that mean that you're thinking about getting a boot cut next year? No? All right, well, you never know. You never know what's going to be in style, right, Christine? That's right, 2 thumbs up. So cool, guys. Any other questions or any other thoughts? Any other meditations? Any other salutations?
Bravo.
I'm getting into my dad jokes. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for dialing in. I really appreciate it. It means a ton to me. You guys have been awesome. I appreciate the questions and all the support. And thank you to everybody from New York Denim Hangs, my clients, family and friends, and people who I don't know. It's awesome to see you guys. If you're ever in Brooklyn, please come by and say hello. And yeah, we'll chat it up. So with that, I think Charles Miller is doing his talk now. So go over to Global Denim Hangs on Instagram and take a look and find his link and go support Charles. He's a wonderful guy. And so I'm excited to see his link as well. So thank you again and see you guys soon.
Good night,
Eric.
Eric.
See you.